Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. Today I sit down with a good friend of mine. He is the general manager of our sponsor for this show, Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. He's been a great friend to me for, a few years. He's very inspiring. He's a role model to many people. Welcome, Sergio Morandin.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you too, man. As I said, since the day that we met through a mutual friend of ours, and I've just had like the utmost respect for your presence of being and your knowledge and experience in recovery. I mean, not to mention that you're just a great guy to hang out with and a lot of fun, but
thank you.
Yeah, and I believe that you help many people see that life can be a lot of fun in recovery.
I think it has to be.
It does.
It's not, then what's the point? Right. Like, what is the point? But, and just to reiterate, like, the feeling's mutual.
Thank you, man.
I found, when we met, it was very easy. It was an easy connection, and it just flowed naturally, right? It was almost like I had known you for about 10 or 15 years. Like, it was that easy.
I know. Yeah.
But
I totally agree.
You're a very open person, so that's not surprising, and I don't really hold much back either.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, but that's it, right? And we speak the same language because we've both been through it. So there's no surprise that we would feel like we were old friends because we've lived a very similar life and we're at a very similar place in life today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
For you, how many you're how many years sober now?
30
years. Amazing. Like, that's inspiration. Sorry?
Dude, I'm breaking records every day.
Yeah.
I would have never in a million years ever imagined myself to be 30 years sober.
Yeah.
I just didn't, there's no way. Even when I entered the, 12-step rooms and stuff like that, and I heard people that were 10, 15, I was just like, never going to happen. Like,
yeah,
whatever.
Totally agree. Me too.
Why even think about it? Because it's just not going to happen. And yet here I am.
Yeah.
But I certainly didn't get there alone. There's a lot of people that helped me to get to where I'm at today.
Yeah, and I believe that's the most important piece of it, right? Like, we don't do this alone, and our own thinking, leads us back to the same place every single time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for sure. So speaking of that, I want to know all about what got you to where you were. I usually have people kind of paint a picture of what it was like growing up. You grew up in Toronto, kind of what the environment was like for you, and kind of take us through the life.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Etobicoke, which is a suburb of Toronto, right? Mm-hmm. Very middle class. And it was a very new neighborhood at the time. In fact, I remember the houses that are now across the street weren't even there. It was just all forested at the time. And now Etobicoke is almost like central Toronto at this point in time. But when I was growing up, it was very on the outskirts of Toronto, considered like the outskirts of Toronto, and I'm an only child of Italian immigrants. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we were the only Italian family on the block, right? So,
wow.
Yeah. So, all my neighbors were like Johnny Smith and, and Phil McDonald and stuff like that. And they were Sergio Morandin, right? So I stuck out a little right from the get-go. And the other thing is, as a child, I stuttered very badly. I had a very bad stutter, and which was fine with the kids in the neighborhood, right? It never seemed to impact me playing with the kids in the neighborhood. But when I went to school, when I started going to school, man, the rules changed immediately, right? And I didn't understand. I was just like, what is going on? Like, how come it's okay with the kids that I hang out with at home, and now I'm at school and it's like constant teasing, constant bullying, humiliation, every day. And I learned to hate school like that. Like it was just torment for me, right? Because unfortunately, I couldn't fight back verbally. Like, what do? You're trapped.
For sure. I mean, when you're, and that's their target is your verbal ability. And so how can you say anything back at that point, right? It's
unless you got an hour to kill, right? Unless you're going to give me about an hour of your time. Like I've got no way of fighting back.
Yeah.
So at the same time that I started going to school, my grandparents immigrated here and came to live with us. So, they're seeing me coming home upset every day.
Right.
And wound up. And then my grandfather dragged me to the garage one day and just said, "What's going on?" Right.
Okay.
And so I tried to tell him what's going on. And I'll never forget this, man. I can remember it like it was yesterday. He got down on his knees and taught me how to throw a punch. Right. And he said, "When they start this horse shit, this is what you do." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And bro, that was a game changer for me. Right.
Right.
Because now I had a way of fighting back.
Yeah.
And my mentality instantly became, I'm going to get you before you ever get a chance to get me. Right. Okay. And I lived my life that way for a long time. Right. Because if you could destroy me, then I'm done. Right. But if I can get to you, then I've got that wall and I've got that buffer between you and I.
Right.
Right. And that
self-preservation, right, at that point.
Yeah. That was my safety net right there.
Mm-hmm.
And life just went on, My parents got me into sports. I played baseball. I played a little bit of football, lacrosse, and I got really heavily involved in hockey, right? And that was my safety zone, right? Because you don't have to talk. You just got to play,
True.
Right?
Yeah.
And I became an overly aggressive, little bit of a violent hockey player, right?
You were the goon. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my thing, right? And again, that gave me a little bit of extra space out there, and everybody knew that, don't get too close to him because he's a little wiggy. So you never know what he's going to do. Sure. And coaches loved it, right? It was a different time. Like coaches loved it, right? They were just like, "Oh yeah, go get him." Like, you're the guy, which just pumped me up, right? Even more.
Right.
So like it was, that affirmation at its best.
Yeah, right. You're getting this recognition and affirmation that okay, violence is the answer, maybe.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons. Right?
Sure.
And it just went from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just kind of my mentality, like, in my, early teens and stuff like that. And then I don't even remember why, but me and a buddy of mine, took half a gallon of my dad's homemade red wine and went out to the local park. And, I don't remember a lot about my first drunk, right? But I remember coming to it about 2 or 3 in the morning. I was completely covered in purple vomit. And I knew I was in a lot of trouble because that was at 12, 13, I wasn't rolling in at 2 or 3 in the morning, right?
Right.
And yet I couldn't wait to do it again.
Okay.
And I could not explain why, but I could not wait to do it again, right? Mm-hmm. And from there on in, any chance I got, that's exactly what I did, right? And of course, drugs were very prevalent because much easier to get, sure. As a 13-year-old, could easily score some hash or something else and and get off that way, right? Because nobody's asking you for an age or majority card, that's for sure.
Right.
And that just, in my high school years, I can honestly say that I was probably under the influence of something every single day.
Yeah. Were you still into sports then in high school? Like you were and drinking, using, so you were balancing these two lives or trying to?
Actually, when I was in grade 12, I had a couple of people from Michigan State come up and scout me, right? And were going to give me a scholarship, which my parents were thrilled about, right? Free education. And then I injured my knee badly, right? And then that just petered out into nothing, right? But at that point in time, I was so messed up, it was going to go sideways, guaranteed. I could just imagine being away from home, at that age, it would have been a disaster. I may have lasted a month at best.
Yeah, right. I can relate to that for sure.
And then, I had some older cousins that taught me that it's better to sell the stuff that I was buying than to just be buying it. You can make
Right.
some.
That's what older cousins are there for.
Yeah,
Teach you the
teach you the ropes, and this is what you do, buddy. And these guys were absolute fall downs, right? But in my eyes, they were rock stars.
Yeah.
They
Right.
were
Right.
Eyes, long hair, tattoos. Nobody cared what they did and stuff, and they didn't listen to anybody anyway. So they were my idols, of course, right?
Right.
Because I always gravitated, and always looked up to people that were going absolutely nowhere, right? But, like if you had a fast car, if you rode a motorcycle, if you were a little bit on the outskirts, long hair, couple of tattoos, you were my idol. You were the guy that I was looking up to. Like it was never going to be, the guy on the honor roll and, the guy that's got his life together. Nah.
Sure.
Even in movies, like I always loved watching gangster movies and stuff like that, and always loved that lifestyle, right?
Right.
And always looked up to it.
And it's funny, like still today, like media does shape our youth, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And that's I think that even just like, before social media and anything like that, like watching movies and television shows where we're idolizing this, like, this lifestyle that we know nothing about, but we see when
Scarface came out, right? I probably saw it about 3 times. And I remember saying to a buddy of mine, I'm going to be that guy. And I remember my buddy looking at me going, did you watch the whole movie, bro? Because it didn't work out too well for him, right? I was like, nah, it's going to be different, right?
I'll be smarter than that one.
Yeah. I've got it covered.
Yeah. Well, we tend not to watch the tape all the way to the end, right? Like,
no.
We stop it just before the party stops.
When the disaster's about to begin, that's when we cut the film.
Yeah. Rewind to the beginning.
And and I just kept. So by the time I left high school, I had a pretty good drinking problem and drug problem going on already. And in my household where I grew up, it was either continue your education or get a job.
Okay.
I wasn't about to get a job, so I went to community college, right?
Okay.
And took some fluff course that I thought was going to be, good for me and stuff like that, and just partied. Like that's it, right? Like my community college was like a high school with ashtrays that had a bar on campus.
Okay. Yeah.
So, just like
sure.
Rarely went to class. I was hanging out in the bar all the time, or in the cafeteria smoking cigarettes, and that was it, right?
Right.
That was my community college life.
Yeah.
And things were just getting worse and worse, right? My drinking was escalating badly. Things at home were brutal because my attitude was horrific, right? Like, mouthy, didn't care what my parents had to say in any way, shape, or form. And just kept thinking to myself, you know what? I'm never going to live your life. Like, I am never going to live my life this way. So why am I even bothering, right?
Yeah.
And I had a testy relationship with my mother my entire life. How can I say this? She was wound pretty tight, right? There was a lot of screaming and yelling, and there was a lot of humiliation from my mom, right? And I try not to judge her for it today, right? I lost my mom in January, but that's just the way it was, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of tension in the household. A lot of it I created, right? And things just went on. So, things just kept getting worse and worse. Like, and my addiction just kept getting worse and worse, right? I was drinking more and more. And then, before I knew it, like, I'd have to wake up in the morning and have a couple of drinks just to stop from shaking, right? Yeah. And that was my norm. And, either smoking dope or doing a line or something, like, just to get the day going where I could feel like, you know what? Okay. Like,
that's to bring you to baseline, basically.
Yeah, just to baseline, and that's where I was at.
Yeah, and that's before the age of 25, right?
I was probably like 21, 22 at that point in time.
Yeah.
So my addiction just took off like a rocket. Like, I've heard many people where it's taken like decades and stuff. Yeah, it did not take me decades. Like, it was there quick.
Exactly the same with me. I listen to people talk about how they eased their way into this problem, and I'm like, no, I had it from get-go.
Anything.
No.
It was like 100 miles an hour. I'm at the finish line. Here I am. you
Yeah.
know, full
Yeah.
blown alcoholic drug addict. I'm 21, 22 years old, right?
Right. Right.
Can't figure out why my buddies are, buying new cars and, starting their lives off and putting down payments on homes or
Yeah.
continuing their education. And my life is just like a tornado, right? It's just like one fiasco after another.
Yeah.
Wonder why.
Try to get us to see that while we're in the eye of that tornado, though, right? Like,
I couldn't see anything. It was like a horse with the blinders on, right? Like
yeah.
my whole, the only thing that I could see is like, when's the next party?
Yep.
Who am I hanging out with tonight? And what are we doing? That's that was all that was important to me, right?
Yeah.
So then I got busted a few times for impaired driving. A few times. I managed to get myself arrested twice in the same day by the same policeman.
For the same charge?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This guy caught me at the beginning of a shift and at the end of his shift, right?
No way.
I'm like,
we can laugh about it now, but I mean, that's a pretty fantastic feat for an alcoholic. Like, that's great. In our world.
I sit back and I remember fairly well, right? I remember getting out of the car. We pulled up at an intersection together, right?
Okay.
And I looked over and he's in his cruiser looking over and he does one of these and I'm like, really? So
yeah.
I just pulled over, right? I was like, okay. And I got out of the car. I just put my hands behind my back and I said, can we not just photocopy the paperwork? And he goes, no, it doesn't work that
way. Oh my goodness.
So like within 9 months, I've got 3 impaired driving charges going.
Right.
Life is spiraling badly, right? And within about a month after the day that I got pinched twice in the same day, I was in a high-speed chase, impaired again.
Shit.
Right?
Oh, wow.
So, arrested again, right? But the rules have changed now because of how many times I've been arrested for the same offense in the same amount of time. So it's no longer like, a little photo shoot, some fingerprints, and, here's your paperwork, off you go. It's like, no, now you're going to the West End Detention Centre. So at this time, I'm like 25, right? And my life is an absolute disaster, right? Like, when I look back on things honestly now, I hated myself. I hated the way that I was living. I just couldn't get out of that rut. Like, I didn't know how to stop. I really did not know how to stop. In my mind, this was magically just going to go away on its own. Like one day I was going to level out and, I was going to drink sociably, which I never did. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't even understand the concept of that. So it's beyond me, but that's what I thought.
Well, it's funny how we can think ourselves into this, like, okay, I'm going to teach myself how to drink socially, or I'm going to teach myself how to control it, or, and all these things that we try to do and manipulate. And, we keep ending up at the same place, and even worse and even worse and even worse. Right.
I remember one time I was about 19 or 20 and we were in someone's backyard at a pool party or something like that. And their dad said to me something to the effect of, you drink pretty heavy. And I said, yes, but I've got it all under control. And I remember him saying to me, like, if you have to control something, it's already out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he walked away and I was like, fuck you.
Yeah, right. Of course. Like we do. Yeah.
It didn't faze me, right? I was just like, whatever.
It's funny how these, I had a lot, looking back now, I had a lot of those people in my life just dropping those little things that should have made me think and should have made me clue into something. But same attitude, go fuck yourself. I've got it under control. I'll take care of it. And I don't need you. I got it from here.
I got all the answers. I don't know any of the questions, but I have all the answers, right? Like that's how lost I was.
Right.
So now I'm in the West End Detention Centre, right? And, it's a totally different world, right? I thought I was a tough guy, but it's different when you're in there and the doors are closed and you don't have the key to get out. Right. And by day 2, I'm starting to get sick. I'm starting to go through ETs. I'm sweating, I'm vomiting, like I can't get off the bathroom. And it's just like, I am very, very ill. And Today, going through that in a detention center, they would have probably whisked me off to either to a hospital or to their medical unit, like
Right.
immediately, right? Back then, I remember telling the guards, like, hey man, I'm really sick. And I remember him looking down from his newspaper, goes, okay. And I
Yeah.
said, you call a nurse? He goes, go back to your cell. And just flipped up his newspaper, like as if to say, I don't care.
Right.
I could
Right.
care less.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did the shake, rattle, and roll in there for about 3 days, right?
Okay.
And I guess I was in there about 2 weeks or something like that. And my mom came to see me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just to tell you how things were at my household, my mother never drove, and my dad refused to drive. He says, you want to go there? Take a cab. I'm not wasting the gas to go see him.
Okay.
Like, not going to do it. Like,
yeah.
whatever.
That says a lot.
So my mom came to see me, and, we're talking in the plexiglass on the phone, and, I'm wearing a really nice orange jumpsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably looked like death warmed over.
Right.
And I just said to her, I said, you got to get me out of here. Like, just get me out of here. And she's just like, well, we're going to talk about that. And I said, like, what is there to talk about? Like, get me out of here. And that's how absolutely arrogant I was. It wasn't even like, hey, I'm really sorry that I've embarrassed you, because that high-speed chase was on City TV News.
Right. Right.
So
yeah,
there was my 5 minutes of fame.
Sure. Right.
You would proud moment for my parents.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
not even considering how this has affected my parents and stuff, and the embarrassment, and the anger and frustration that they must be feeling. Just making demands like, get me out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Like not even like, hey, I'm sorry about this. I don't know what's going on. But nothing. Like, just get me out of here.
Yeah.
That was my attitude, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I look at it now, and it's just so selfish and so, like, intertwined in my own self, and not giving a shit about anybody around me.
Yeah.
Right. Just not caring at all.
Mm-hmm.
So to my mom's credit, she actually stood her ground that day. And my mom used to cave with me quite often, right? And she just said, like, you can either talk to me about this, or I'm leaving right now.
Okay.
When you have that little moment of like, ooh, this is real. Like,
this is real now. Yeah, for sure.
And she just said, I'll get you out of here, but you got to do something about your drinking and your drug problem. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this isn't up for negotiation. And my mom just started to hang up the phone. She goes, then good luck. And I started banging on that glass like it was going out of stuff. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't leave. Don't leave.
Right.
And I just finally said, fine, just get me the hell out of here. Like, whatever.
Okay.
Like, just get me out of here, right? So a buddy of mine, a couple of days later, I got bailed out. And, man, I had so many bail conditions, it was unbelievable.
Right.
So I get out. A buddy of mine drove my mom to pick me up and stuff like that. And we pull into my driveway, and I said to him, you coming in? He goes, nah, I'll catch you next time, brother.
Okay.
And it's been a big, big clue for me, right?
Right.
I walk in through my front door, and my next door neighbor is sitting in my living room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I despised this guy. I couldn't stand him. He was always happy. Like, you say like weird things to me, and like, how are things going today? And like, are you doing okay? And, there's other ways to live, eh?
Right.
And
dropping those little seeds.
Little breadcrumbs that, that I just bypassed, and, used to give him a little 4-letter words every once in a while, and told him what he could do with his life and stuff. And now this guy's in my living room, and I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me, man. I just got out of the West End Detention Centre. Like, what is going on?
Right.
So I just looked at my mom, and I said, I'm not in the mood. Like, I'm really not in the mood. My mom just looked at me and said, I could care less what kind of mood you're in. You think I'm in the mood?
Yeah.
Sit down.
Okay.
So then, all right, I might want to sit down for a little bit. I kind of pushed things a little heavy here. So I sit down with this guy, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go, right? He's going to tell me what I need to do to change my life, and, maybe join a church, or who knows what he's going to tell me, right? And that's not what this dude did at all, right?
Okay.
He talked to me about how at one time he was living under a bridge, right? And how he couldn't stop drinking, and how his life was an absolute disaster. And I'm thinking, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
This guy worked for Bell Canada. Like, he had a family. I'm thinking, like, whatever, man.
Right.
And then he told me, like, hey, man, like, I tried to take my life one day that, it was so bad. And I was like, whatever. And he rolled up his shirt sleeve and he had these scars, right? And he says, that's why I tried to open up my arm with a broken bottle. That's how bad it got for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, man, but I believed him. You know, I just sat there and went, okay. And he said, do you want to know how I stopped drinking? I was like, okay.
Right.
Huh. And he goes, I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was like, oh, you got... Like, when he said those words, I felt like I'd been shot in my seat. I was like, come on.
Right.
Whoa. Alcoholics Anonymous? Like, I was 25 years old. I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Anything like that. Not that I knew anything about Alcoholics Anonymous, because I didn't. Zero.
Right.
I'd watched an episode of Hill Street Blues, this television show that used to be on.
Yeah.
And one of the police officers was in AA, and I remember them sitting around a table one day and him just saying, my name is so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. And that's what I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew people didn't drink there. That's it. That's all I knew. But I thought, never. No way. Like, there's got to be something else. Anything else.
Right.
And then he said, would you like to go to a meeting? So I glanced into the kitchen and my mom's glaring at me from the kitchen.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, the new warden doesn't seem to be happy,
Right.
So I just look, sure, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, great. He goes, we'll go tomorrow. And I'm like, tomorrow? That's a little soon. And he's like, sir, like, you got plans? Like, not really.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay. He goes, I'll pick you up and we'll go tomorrow. And I was like, where? And it was like a block and a half away from my house, right? And I was like, in my own neighborhood?
Right.
And he just looked at
me.
He goes, everybody knows that you drink too much. It's not a secret. I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's how it started for me, man. The next day he took me to an AA meeting and, I had no idea what was going on. They read some stuff and it seemed like really weird to me, and people were saying a few things here and there. Yeah. And then this guy that was about 10 years older than me, maybe 10 or 15 years older than me, got up and basically told my life story through his eyes.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
The only difference was this guy ran over a 3-year-old girl in a blackout and killed her. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
When he said that, Chris, in that meeting, I swear to God, a chill went up my spine because I thought to myself, that's going to be you. Right. Sooner or later, that's going to be you. Because there had been so many times I had driven home, couldn't remember how I got home, couldn't remember, you see my car parked on a 45 in the driveway. And I would literally look at the bumpers for blood and stuff like that because couldn't remember anything. I remember one time losing control driving through a bus shelter, right, with my car, through a bus shelter. Like, if there had been anybody in there, there's smoke, right? For
sure.
And that's just the way it was, right? So when this guy said this, it was like a chill went up my spine. Mm-hmm. And, so that's basically how it started. And the next thing I know, I'd met a couple of guys at that first meeting and stuff. And one guy called me the next day and said, hey, man, I'm going to pick you up and take you to another meeting. I was like, oh, just what I want to do. Yeah, perfect.
Sure.
I wanted no part of AA. I wanted no part. In my head, I just needed a little bit of time for the heat to cool down. And then, I could start doing my thing again. And, everything would be rosy, right? Yeah, everything was not going to be rosy. And that's not the way that things happened for me, right? I just, this one guy, God love him, this guy, Dave, he was about 8 or 9 months sober at that time. And, he was really happy and had that AA buzz. I'm so happy. Yeah. Thing going. And he was going to make me happy if it killed him, right? So,
right.
we were just going to meeting after meeting after meeting. Like on Saturdays, we would go to 2. On Sundays, we would go to 2. And we were at one every night. And man, before I knew it, I was like 4 or 5 months sober. Wow. Hadn't touched anything in 4 or 5 months. And, now mind you, I had a lot of court appearances as well, right? And, I had this, boundary that I had to keep myself in. I couldn't go
Right.
south of this street, and I couldn't go north of this street. And,
Yeah.
The weirdest thing though, in all my bail conditions, nowhere did it say cannot consume alcohol or can't
Oh,
be
wow.
in a bar. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was bizarre. I couldn't have car keys, and I couldn't drive a car, and I couldn't be holding car keys. That was
But you
immediately.
could
But
walk
I
to the
could
bar and drink all you want.
I could drink my face off as long as I was walking or took a cab.
Yeah.
So, and that's all I was doing, right? And I'd gotten a job, and I was working construction as well. So I was really busy in the beginning,
Right.
very, very busy, right? I was starting to make a little bit of money and put it away and stuff like that, and whatever money I was putting away, I was handing to my lawyer,
Right.
just moving along.
As we do in early sobriety.
Yeah, and before I knew it, I was a year sober.
Right. And were you working steps at that time? Were you just kind of hanging on?
I'd love to say that I was working steps, but that would be a load of horseshit, right?
Okay.
I was just going to meetings, right, and just
Mhm.
listening. And I wasn't really big on going to a discussion meeting. And for anyone that doesn't know what a discussion meeting is, there's two types of meeting in a 12-step program. There's an open meeting where someone, will get up in front of a room and kind of do what I'm doing, just tell their story, right? And how things are for them. And then there's a closed meeting where you'll discuss one of the steps and just talk about how it applies to you in your life today, right? And how you work that initial step or whatever you're working on, right? And I wasn't going to very many closed meetings, like maybe one or two, a month, if that,
Right.
right?
And just taking
The
up a
rest-
seat while you're there.
I was just taking up a seat, man. I was
Yeah.
just keeping busy and staying in the rooms and smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and just taking up a seat basically is
Yeah.
right, and hanging on. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was hanging on.
Right. I think that's important to touch on, right? Because so many people go to meetings, they don't get a sponsor, they don't work the steps, and then they might fall off, and then they wonder why. And it's not that recovery isn't gained through osmosis from sitting in the rooms, right?
No.
It's all actionable steps that
wish
need to
it
be.
was, but it's not.
Yeah, I wish it was too. Yeah.
I heard something in early recovery that still rings true to me today.
Mhm.
Recovery's like a bank account. You get to pull out what you put in. And
Yeah.
if you don't put anything in, you got nothing to pull out.
So
Right.
true.
And that's just the way it is, right? It's like
Yeah.
anything in life. You don't put any effort in, you don't put any work in, you got nothing to get from it. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Like Wayne Gretzky didn't become the hockey player that he is by never skating and never practicing.
Exactly.
That's just reality. So as I said, next thing I know, I'm getting a 1-year medallion, right, for being sober for a year. And things at home had calmed down a little bit, not a great deal, but a little bit. And and my parents came to my medallion, right? And I'll never forget this, man. When I sat down from getting my medallion, my dad leaned over and he grabbed my arm and he goes, "I love you and I'm proud of you." I'd never heard that from my dad. Never heard that from him, And, my dad's not one of these dudes that is very emotional and expresses his emotions big time and stuff like that. Like, I've heard "I'm proud of you" twice.
Wow.
That time when I got my 1-year medallion and the day before I got married, right?
Okay.
And that's it, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? It meant the world to me.
Yeah.
I've been waiting to hear that my entire life.
Right.
It's
sometimes the small affirmations they mean the world to us, and
it was huge.
Yeah. This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another Road utilizes unique individual focused plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program, and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca.
As I said, I was working, keeping busy. A lot of my charges got dismissed,
Right.
through poor police work and a
Okay.
fair lawyer.
Yeah.
And, so I was feeling pretty good about life.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, I'm making money and life's going good. And then I started dating this girl, and, meetings went by the wayside very quickly, right?
Right.
Going from like 6 a week to like 3 to like 2 to like 1 a week to like 1 a month. And then
Yeah.
before you know it, I'm a year and a half sober. I'm not going to any. And as
Right.
I said, I haven't done any step work. I haven't done any work on myself. The only thing that I've done is I've stopped drinking and stopped drugging. That's it.
Right. So still truly white knuckling it at that point, like without even the support of the fellowship in the meetings, right? Like
Nothing. Zero.
Yeah.
So the relationship blows up, me and this girl, and I was really into this chick at that time. One of my charges came through and I lost my license, right? And had to do some community service work and stuff like that. And it just seemed like my life was imploding. Everything that started to become good was just like going by the wayside, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I was so filled with anxiety every day, right? Just filled with anxiety all the time. And I couldn't understand why, right? I'm thinking like, I'm not doing anything anymore. Like, why do I feel this way? Like, why am I so wound up all the time? Because I hadn't done anything. I hadn't done any work on myself. The only thing I stopped
You're
doing
still carrying so much, right?
I stopped drinking. Big deal. Like, that's all I had done. Dude, I found myself in my mom's basement trying to stick a gun in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger, and
in recovery.
In recovery.
Yeah, that's important.
Like a year and a half sober. That's where I was at. Just so sick of feeling the way that I felt that I figured the only answer was, let's just end this. Let's just shut it down for good, right? And the phone rang. So I still to this day cannot tell you why I answered the phone. The only reason that I can really give you is my higher power made me answer the phone, and it was a woman from my home group, right?
Okay.
What are you doing? And I said, oh, you don't want to know what I'm doing. She goes, yeah, I do. And I told her the truth. I don't know why, but I told her the truth, right? And she said, go out on your front doorstep. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And I was like, nah. She goes, go out on your doorstep. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And she was.
Wow.
And she spent the entire afternoon just talking to me, right?
Jeez, yeah.
You got to get back to meetings. Like, you haven't done anything with your life. You haven't done any work. Like, what do you expect?
Right.
About it? Of course, this is how you feel. Like, of course, you're filled with anxiety and, and guilt and shame and everything else rolled into it, right?
Yeah.
She goes, like, just come back to meetings, right? And she picked me up that night, took me to another meeting, and, I went back to my home group and got another sponsor, right? And I knew this guy was heavy into step work, right? And
okay.
I picked him for a reason. He was a firefighter, right? And hard-nosed guy, like no nonsense. Like, this is what we're gonna do,
Yeah.
None of this going to a million open meetings. You're gonna go to a million discussion meetings, whether you like it or not, right?
Right.
And I remember he used to drag me to this one meeting all the time at this one group, and I hated this meeting with a passion because we always ended up sitting in this room where it would be me, my sponsor, and about 12 women. And I thought, you gotta be kidding. Anything but this meeting. I used to beg, I said, please, I'll go to a million meetings, just not this one. I hate this one. Why, Serge? I don't relate to them. Like, we don't have anything in common. He goes, Serge, did you drink too much? Like, well, yeah, of course I did. He goes, so did they. I'll meet you there.
Okay.
So again, going to this meeting. And looking back on it, that meeting allowed me to drop my guard enough that I could share openly with these women with not having to worry about what some guy across the table was thinking about me.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yeah,
right?
It does.
And I tell you, to this day, I still love these women that were in those rooms. Like they saved my life and my sanity. Right. I remember I'd been going to that meeting for about a year or so. Right. And I can't remember what was going on in my life at the time, but I actually broke down and cried in a meeting. Right.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time that I had cried in about a decade, probably. Right.
Right.
And man, when the floodgates opened, look out, man. I could not stop crying, right? And I remember this one woman, she just put her arms around me and she goes, I just want to tell you that I love you.
Mm-hmm.
You crazy son of a bitch. I love you. Right? She was a native woman, right? She was like, oh, I loved her to death, right? She's gone now, right? But and she just kissed me on the forehead and she goes, keep coming around. You're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Just keep coming around, right? And that's what I did, right? I just, I got heavy into the step work. Mm-hmm. And, I was going to a lot of meetings and things just started to evolve. Were things always perfect? No. I had lots of ups and downs in my life, right? A lot of things were great and a lot of things weren't so great, right? But started to work on me and I started to get rid of some of the baggage that I'd been carrying around for so many years, right?
Yeah.
Getting rid of a lot of the guilt, getting rid of a lot of the shame, the poor self-esteem that I had, right? I used to put on a great face and a lot of bravado and stuff like that, but I always was insecure and I always worried about what you thought of me and I'd be a chameleon a lot of times, right? Act a certain way with these people and act a certain way, but I was never myself, right? Because I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I had no idea who I was. So how could I be myself when I don't know who I am? I'm whomever I think you need me to be at that point in time.
Right.
So that was, some of the things that I was trying to work on and trying to change is just being authentic, right?
Right.
And just being me,
Yeah.
For good or for worse, whatever it was, right? But this is who I am, like it or lump it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big thing for anybody in recovery. Like we stunt our growth when we start drinking and using heavy, and we don't, we stop growing as an individual. We grow in this little bubble that we've created for ourselves, and then when we get out of that, we're so like emotionally immature at that point, and we don't have a clue who we are. Like we don't know how to turn up for ourselves, how to show up for ourselves, how to be there. And how to, like, we have no idea who we are. So how can we be proud of ourselves?
Yeah.
We have to figure that out, right? Who are we? What makes me tick? Because for years and years and years, drugs and alcohol has been the only thing that made me tick. Now I need to figure out, what's authentically me?
To me, like when I was drinking and using, that was who I was. I was the party guy.
Yeah.
Now you've taken that away. Who the hell am I? I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea. What am I going to be? Who am I going to be? Right. How am I supposed to feel? I don't know. I don't know what to do with all these emotions because I never had them before.
Yeah.
As soon as I started to feel something that I didn't like, well, I knew how to get rid of it.
Sure. Wash it away. Yeah.
Yeah. About 10 ounces, usually you got it melted out real quick.
Yeah.
But as I said, like in recovery, there's been a lot of ups and downs. When I was about 5 years sober, one of my best friends that I grew up with died in my arms of a heart attack, right? He had a massive heart attack in front of me, and died while I was giving him CPR, right? That was devastating for me, man. Yeah. Having to go to the hospital and, his mom's there and I grew up with this in this guy's house. If he wasn't at my house, I was at his house, right?
Right.
So his mother was like a second mother to me. And for me to have to say, he's gone. Like, it was crushing, right?
Right.
I didn't know what to do. So I did what I was supposed to do. I went to a lot of meetings and I clung to my sponsor, right? For support because I needed it badly. You know,
Yeah.
I was wise enough to do that, right?
Yeah. I think, you're wise enough to acknowledge the fact that you can't do it on your own, and that,
No,
if you're left to your own thinking, like we said earlier, we know where it leads us back to.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's a big thing, I think, for a lot of people. They don't have the humility to say that, to actually be aware of that and realize that they do need the fellowship of other people who have been through it and walked the walk, um, to help, take their hand and walk it with them.
if there's one thing that I can say about, any 12-step room for
Yeah.
that matter, name a situation somebody in that room's been through it.
Right.
Whether it be a
100%.
divorce, death of a family member, right?
Yeah.
You name the situation, somebody has gone through that or worse. Like
Yeah.
there's always someone that you can talk to about something, about,
For
whatever's
sure.
going on in your life. So that was like a huge, impact on me, right? Like when my buddy Pat died, right? It was devastating because he was like a brother to me, right?
Yeah.
And so that messed me up for a while, and I remember thinking like, this is so messed up. Like, dude was like 30 years old, right?
Right.
Just turned 30 and, literally keeled over like right in front of me. And I'm like, is this it? Is this
Yeah.
life? Like,
Yeah.
is this all there is? Like, you work and then you keel over one day.
Right.
Right. So I needed to find something more, right? There had to be something that was a bigger part of life, right? And, I was never a big God guy, right?
Yeah.
I used to cringe when I heard that word in the rooms and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And probably because it was shoved down my throat growing up. And, I went to Catholic schools and stuff like that and just wanted no part of it, right?
Right.
I find it a little bit too much and stuff like that. And it just wasn't for me, right? So I went on a journey. I shouldn't really say I went on a journey, but I went on a hardcore search at that point in time to find something that I could believe in, right?
Okay.
And I could have faith in and kind of, like a higher power or God of my own understanding, right? For me. For what I find, what I came to find is it was actually the 12-step program itself and the fellowship, right?
Yeah.
Here's a group of people doing the exact same thing that I'm trying to do, right? Stay clean and sober.
Right.
And if I could have faith in them, then I could have faith in myself, right? And I just learned, very early on that, you know what, I got to ask for help. And when I get that help, to say thank you for that help, right?
Right.
And I've also learned, the more I give, the more I get back. When I give of myself and I don't have any expectations, that's
Yeah.
the key, right?
That's the caveat. Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but like before when I was drinking, if I gave you something, there was a hook. Like I expected something back and a lot more than I gave you.
Right.
Like today, when I give of myself, I give of myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I try not to have any expectations of getting anything back. If I do, it's awesome. If I don't, so what?
Right.
I move on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've learned pretty quickly that it feels good to help people. It feels
it really
good,
does.
To help someone on their journey or something like that, or to just hold the door open for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simple.
Yeah.
To be a decent person. It's not that difficult to say good morning sometimes. You never know what someone's going through, right? And sometimes that can be the difference.
It's so funny that you say that now, right? Like that was the guy that you hated, your next door neighbor. How you doing?
Couldn't
What's going on? Yeah, and it's
Here's
just
the kicker. I was a pallbearer at his funeral.
Oh, really? Wow.
Loved the guy.
Of course.
I got to know him really well and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he used to like be one of my biggest cheerleaders. He'd be just like, you know what, Serge, you're doing fantastic. Look at you now. He goes, look at you. He goes, people look at you differently.
Yeah.
He goes, people are happy to see you. He goes, I'm always happy to see you. Right. And we grew pretty tight. Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he succumbed to cancer and stuff like that, and he had a long, hard-fought battle and stuff like that. But his wife came up to me, like, when he passed and stuff, and she goes, "I'd like you to be a pallbearer," and I
Yeah.
was blown away. I think I was about 12 or 14 years sober at that point in time, right?
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
was just, wow.
What an
Yeah.
honor. Yeah.
Yeah, I was honored. I
Mhm.
truly was, right? And I cried, man, at his funeral because he was a great guy,
Yeah.
and he saved my life.
Yeah. He really did his job as
Yeah,
as a member of a 12-step meeting. He
yeah,
didn't shove it down your throat. He
nope.
told you his story, and he told
And left
you,
it up to me.
yeah, would you like what I have? Yeah.
Here's the help. Do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, okay, go
Yeah.
back to your misery. No problem. It's
Yeah.
easy.
It is. It really
You
is,
know
right?
it
It's so
well.
simple.
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's such a simple concept, right? Like you to do a 12-step call, like, you just lay it out. This is what happened. This is
This is
where
it.
it brought me. This is how I changed, and this is where I am today. If you
Yeah,
like what you heard, I can take you somewhere that you can hear more of it. If not,
yeah.
like you said, go back to your misery, and at least now you know it's here. That's the good thing, right? You tell your story, at least it's here. You know where to go when things get bad.
I was at a meeting last night, right? With my wife, who's also in the 12-step program, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Wonderful
And
woman, by the way.
yeah, I got
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, you did.
So
Yes, you did.
she got lucky too. I got lucky. She got lucky. So, anyways, there's been a young guy that's been coming to this meeting a little bit here and there and stuff like that. So I said to him, "Hey, man, it's really good to see you," right? And he looked at me kind of puzzled. He goes, "Oh, you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I remember you." And he was like, "Wow." He goes, "That's pretty cool." And then he
Yeah.
said to me, he goes, "How long have you been sober?" Right? And I said, "A while."
Yeah.
And he goes, "What's a while?" I go, 30 years. He's like, 30 years? 30 years? I was like, "Yeah, calm down, man. Calm down."
Yeah.
I came in early.
Right.
I go, "Yeah, I went to a lot of meetings and I didn't die. So here we are, 30 years later."
Sure.
But
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
could just see in his eyes, like, 30 years? What are you talking about? Like, this guy's trying
Yeah.
to get 30 days, right?
Right. But I mean, at that point, like,
Oh,
that seems unfathomable.
I might
30
as well
years.
be Captain Kirk that just beamed down from the USS Enterprise, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, because I remember that, man. I used to hear these people that were like, 25 years sober, 30 years sober, and they're like, come on.
Right.
30 years without a drink, 25 years without a drink, like not even one. Give me a break.
And we're working on 30 hours at this point. Like, you know what I mean? Like, get me
I'm
30
clinging on to
hours.
30 days.
Yeah.
I'm clinging on to 30 days, right?
Yeah.
Shake and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do need that. We need those inspirational people that can show us that it is possible. And like you said,
Oh,
like
for sure.
that those are the people we look up to and the people that we know we can go to for advice or, any questions we have, like how do you deal with this thing? Because chances are you've been through it or you've seen somebody that has, and you
Yep.
have an
Absolutely.
answer for me, or you could find one. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and you hit it right on the money, right? If I don't have the answer, chances are I know somebody that does have the answer.
Right.
And I can point you in their direction.
Yeah.
Right. But either way, we'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's the beauty of recovery. It's, there's nothing that can't be handled in the rooms.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And the other thing that I heard, like, a long, long time ago, is like, I'll buy you the first drink if it's actually going to change the situation that you're in.
Right. Right.
If it's going to make things better for you, I'll buy the first round.
Yeah.
But nothing that you're going through or nothing that you're feeling is actually going to get better by picking up a drug or a drink. Nothing. No. It's hard to fathom that when you're first trying to get clean and sober, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the times I need. No, you don't need, you want.
You want. Yeah.
Want. I want to use. I don't need to use. I want to use. The difference. And the reason that I want to is because I don't like how I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. And I'm not comfortable with how I'm feeling. And I know how to change that like that.
Right. And
If I
because I
can get
don't know
rid,
how to deal with it, I don't know
yeah,
how to deal with how I'm feeling without the help of drugs or alcohol.
yeah. And it
Yeah.
doesn't even help you. It just masks it. You know, I call it like the
Compounds it
Coca-Cola.
really.
Yeah. I call it the Coca-Cola bottle effect, right? You got a bottle of Coca-Cola, you shake it, you shake it, you shake it. Well, sooner
Yeah.
or later that top's coming off. And when that top comes off, it makes a mess
It sure does. Yeah.
every single time, right?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that was my life, right?
Yeah.
The pressure would build, and you know, and Serge would, you know, perform, you
Yeah.
know, like a champ, make an absolute disaster, and then sit back and go, wow, how did this happen?
Right.
Well, how do you think it happened?
Yeah.
You're drinking and drugging like a lunatic.
What did you
It's not a
expect?
recipe. It's not a recipe for success.
Right. Absolutely. At what point do you open this recovery center, another road, and like how do you transition life into I mean, at this point you're 12, 14 years sober, giving back. What are the steps that came before another road, and how did you get into your role there?
I opened up another road with a good friend of mine that I met in early recovery.
Okay.
And he was a guy that really showed me that, you know what? You can have fun without the booze and drugs.
Yeah.
I spent my first New Year's with him.
Okay.
We went to football games together. You know, we played a little bit of hockey together and stuff like that. He was the guy that really showed me that, hey, you know what? There's a life outside of booze and being in bars,
Right.
right? There's a lot of stuff to do out here. You
Yeah.
just got to figure out what you want to do, right?
Right. What do you like?
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And we always kept in touch, right? He moved out of, you know, Etobicoke and stuff like that, but we always kept in touch and we were always close and stuff like that. It was just one of those things where we clicked and we were tight and he was a good friend and stuff like that. So he was a stockbroker,
Okay.
right? Working on Bay Street and stuff like that. And he said he just got to a point where he said, if I had to buy and sell one more stock, he goes, I was going to jump off the building. He goes, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Wow.
Right. He goes, I absolutely hated it. Right. I detested it.
Okay.
And he said, he goes, he was probably in his 50s at that point, right? Like early 50s. And he's about 10 years older than I am. And he was just like, what am I going to do now? Like, if I don't want to do this, this is what I've done my entire life.
Sure.
What the hell am I going to do? And he was at an AA meeting and just chatting with this lady. And she goes, Bill, why don't you become an addictions counselor? And he was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, why not? And he was just like, yeah, okay. So he thought about it, did some research, and went back to school.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So he goes, dude, he goes, I was terrified. He goes, I'm like 52 years old, going back to school that I hadn't been in like 40 years. Right? And he's just like, what am I doing? He goes, my first day, he goes, my hands were shaking. He goes, my palms were sweaty. He goes, but once I got into it, he goes, I loved it. Right?
Okay.
So he started working at a few different treatment centers and stuff like that. And he saw some things that he liked and he saw some things that he really didn't like, right? He worked at a couple of private ones. And he said, what I really didn't like is they sold a great game.
Yeah.
But what actually transpired, he goes, was a spin drive, what he called a spin drive. Get them in for like 28 days, you know, keep them busy doing fluff work and stuff like that, and ship them out the door. And if they relapse, outstanding, bring them back in and cash that check again, right? Yeah. And he was just like, this is wrong. Like, this is, it doesn't sit well with me, right?
Yep.
And I had been working construction and was getting tired of that, to be honest with you, right? I'd been operating heavy machinery for about 24, 25 years. And, you know, as I said, we were communicating back and forth and stuff like that. And he said to me one time, just in a conversation, you know, we were having a coffee after a meeting one time. He goes, I would love to open up my own place and do this right. And actually give people decent treatment at a fair, decent price. Right. I thought, yeah, that'd be cool. And I left that and I kept thinking, right? That does sound cool.
Yeah.
And I phoned him up and I said, well, what's stopping you?
Right.
And he goes, well, I don't have enough money to do it myself. And he goes, and I can't run the place myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to do everything by myself? And I said to him, I said, okay, so what if I come in with you?
Right.
And he's like, what would you do? And I said, I'll run the day-to-day stuff, pay the
Okay.
bills, collect the money, like, do all the Joe jobs, right?
Yeah.
Grab the groceries, whatever needs to be done. That's what I'll take care of. You handle the counseling part, and the program, and I'll handle all the business aspect and all the paperwork.
Right.
And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. So we sat down and, we started to figure things out, right? And, it's been about 8.5 going on 9 years now, and things are working out well, right?
Yeah.
I'm very proud of the place, because we care. We actually
Yeah.
care. And it's not a spin dry place. It's like we introduce people to a lot of different aspects of recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's 12-step based, but we do a lot of other stuff as well, right?
Right.
There's yoga, there's Reiki therapy. We have a psychotherapist that comes in twice a week, right? We take them out into the real world, right? And, take them out on hikes and different places to go see. And, there's a Buddhist temple that's close to us that we go to every once in a while.
Very
So
cool.
we try and incorporate a lot of different things, right? And we keep it in a household setting so it doesn't feel clinical.
Yeah.
It's not like you're in a hospital or in some sort of center and stuff like that.
Right.
It's in a large house in the country and stuff like that. And, the clients participate in cooking their own meals and stuff like that. And, they've got a few things to do here and there. And we make them accountable, right?
Yeah.
Which, isn't exactly an addict or an alcoholic strong suit, right?
No, never is. Yeah.
And, you get used to being in a bit of a community again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, working together and, and handling different personalities and stuff like that.
Yep.
And things are working, right? And
Yeah.
that's how it goes.
I think it's awesome, and I know several people who have been through the program, and either people that knew me that I ended up hooking them up with you, and they come out and they're like, oh my God, my life has changed, and they're still sober today. Or people that I just meet in the rooms that are like, that just happens come up in conversation. Like, oh, I was at another road, I just got out, or I went to another road 3 years ago, and it started me on my journey, and I'm here today. But I don't think I would be here without that program.
I have clients that have gone through there like 5, 6, 7 years ago I'm still in contact with today, right?
Yeah.
They'll send me a text message. Hey man, I was just thinking about you. I drove by the place and you popped into my mind. How are things going? This is what I'm doing and stuff.
Yeah.
And like when you see a person come in that's broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty much at their lowest. Like when you're walking into a treatment center,
yeah,
life's
never
not
good.
Life's not rolling your way, right?
Yeah.
And when you see them come out of there and they've got a little bit of hope, right?
Yeah.
And a little bit of a glimmers come back in their eye, and then you see them a few years later and they're flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's no other feeling like it. There's no other feeling like it, and knowing that you had a small part in that is just it's outstanding. It's great.
It's beautiful. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. And, it really, it speaks to your willingness to always be giving back. And, the success rate, of the program too is phenomenal. I mean, you don't hear about that too often, right? Like,
no, you don't hear about it too often, but like I can't sit here and pound my own chest about that, right? We have really good counselors, right? Yep. And my business partner works very hard, like with the program and stuff like that, and making sure that everybody's settled in properly and and comfortable, and and things are running smoothly and stuff like that. So, things are good that way, right? So it's not just a matter of like, oh, I did it all. No,
sure,
not even close. Like, am I part of it? Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? there's a lot of moving parts, and we've got a lot of good moving parts.
For sure. I really appreciate, I appreciate you. I appreciate your story. I appreciate, the sponsorship and you came to me before I had any episodes up. You believed in me with no, nothing to look at. And that really means a lot to me, man. I mean, you're...
Well, I know how you are as a person, right?
Thank you.
I know you. And I know that you put your heart and soul into it.
I do,
right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have any reservations, right?
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, if Chris is doing this, he's going full bore. It's not going to be half-assed. So what's not to believe in?
Well, I appreciate that, man.
And hey, man, like, you know a little bit about my story, but you don't know the whole deal and stuff like that. So
right.
You had faith in me as well. So it's a two-way street, right? You get back what you get, right?
Absolutely.
And that's recovery at its best, right?
It sure is. Yeah.
You give and you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
And this is the biggest piece that I found, right? The more I put into my recovery, the more I give away freely of myself, the better I feel.
Yeah.
The absolute better I feel. I can honestly say that, is my life perfect? No, absolutely, right? Like we all have difficulties in our life and stuff like that, right? But my life is pretty good today, man.
Yeah.
I'm married, as you said, to a wonderful woman, right? Who is like nothing like me, right? Like she's really like the complete opposite to me, right? She's quiet, like, she's sweet. She's very empathetic always and stuff like that. Like, she's a displaced hippie is what I call her, right?
Right.
She's got that, I love everything and, everything's great and, be nice to everybody at all times. And sometimes I'm like, wow, really? But where did I meet her? I met her in a 12-step room, right?
Right.
Was it supposed to happen? Probably, right? I wasn't looking for that at that point in time.
Yeah.
If you had told me 4 or 5 years ago, hey man, you're going to be getting married, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Because I had no intention of getting married. Like none.
Yeah. I
was at the point I was like, all right, man, I'm over 50. I got a few toys. I got a pickup truck. I got a classic car. I got a dog. And like life is good. Like I'll go where I want, do what I want, when I want, right? Yeah. And then we met, right? And of course, that plan went right out the window, right? So.
My story exactly. With Joe, it's funny when we're ready, those people get kind of plunked in our place, or in our way. I shouldn't say in our way, in our lives.
Yeah,
that we can truly connect with. And
when I asked Rachel to marry me, right?
Yeah.
At the end of that night, I remembered a conversation that my godfather had with me, right, when I was like a teenager and stuff. Because I remember saying to him, how do you know? How do you know you're with the right person? And he said, oh, you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll know without a shadow of a doubt. Right. When you're with the right woman, you will know. Right. And when I remember when I parked my car that night, right after we got engaged, I was just like, holy shit, he was right.
He was right. Yeah. Yeah.
You do know. Because I knew. I just knew. And I don't know why. Right. Well, obviously the way that I felt about her and stuff like that, but it just felt right.
Yeah. It's amazing, man. And you guys are so great together.
Yeah. Like we have a lot of fun.
Yeah. You do.
I tease her like nonstop. I torment her. Right?
Yeah.
And she puts up with me. So
for sure. Yeah, man. Well, we hope to get together with you guys very soon. And, I just want to, I want to thank you so much for being so open and honest and, sharing your experience, strength, and hope with, our viewers and listeners. Finally, I just want to ask, where can people find you or find the treatment center if they're looking online?
If they're looking online, they can just Google Another Road Addiction Recovery Center, and our website will pop up, right? Okay. There's a 1-800 number linked to our website. They can give that a call, and that gets funneled directly to my business partner, Bill, who is our program manager, right? And whatever questions, whatever concerns you may have, right, you can ask him, and trust me, he will run you through the whole scenario of what you can expect and stuff like that, and what you can't expect.
Well,
and if you're really
again,
looking for me, go into Etobicoke and go to a 12-step meeting. You'll probably find me somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, again, Serge, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, man. I love you to death, and hope to see you very soon.
Love you too, brother. Thank you so much.